Right, so in way of introductions, this is AWS End User Computing webinar that we've put together. So we've had quite a few queries about it recently, so we thought it'd be a good thing to run through. My name's Ricky Cousins. I'm a solutions architect and I work for Rebura. So there's the About Us page if you want a bit more info, but basically we're one of the fastest growing AWS service providers. We're focused on small, medium businesses, largest mid-market partner for AWS in 2019. We provide consulting services, so assisting people with migrations to cloud, cloud optimization work. We provide 24/7 support and monitoring, and we do quite a lot of cost optimization work. One of the reasons we're running through this is that we're one of the 2 UK launch partners for the end user computing competency from AWS, which basically just recognizes our ability to deploy workspace solutions, something we do quite a lot. There's a lot of customers that are very interested in it, and it's something that we've been able to help a lot of people out with. So this webinar is basically just so we can give you guys an overview of AWS WorkSpaces, have a bit of a chat about how we can tie it into your current infrastructure, so things like your current back office systems, authentication, file shares, things like that. We're going to have a bit of an overview of WorkDocs, just a fairly high-level explanation of what it is and what you can do with it. We'll give you a demo of workspaces, so just how you can quickly create a workspace and get things running. This is going to be about 40 minutes or so. We'll do some questions at the end if anyone's got anything they want to run through with us. But during the presentation, if you've got any questions, just put them in the chat. We've got Dan Butler, who's our technical director, and he'll be able to answer anything, or we'll take some details and get back to you if it's something that's a bit more in depth. Right. So just to run through at a high level, the AWS end user computing services that are available. The main one that most people are going to be interested in at the moment is WorkSpaces. So that's Amazon's desktop as a service. Basically just provides you workstations that are sitting in the cloud that you can connect to easily. It's just a remotely accessible workstation effectively. We'll also be running through WorkDocs. So that's AWS's managed content store and collaboration service. It's basically just an alternative to your existing file shares. So if you've got stuff on Windows file shares at the moment and you wanted to move them all to being cloud native, this is where you'd move them to. So obviously it offers storage, but it also offers some collaboration services, being able to run through simple workflows. The other 2 services that are available, which we're not going to run through here because they're a bit more complicated. AppStream. So AppStream allows you to stream individual applications to end users. It's kind of like Citrix in that regard. You can stream them via a web browser, or you could stream them to a workspace or another workstation. And it just lets you centrally manage applications, so you can upgrade things in one place and then just stream that managed application to an end user. WorkLink is another service that Amazon provide that allows your end users to securely access internal back office sites or web applications that you've got available. So if you've got things that are currently hosted on AWS or that you've got accessible from AWS via a VPN, you can deploy this service just to give your users access to websites. What's quite nice about it is that the information isn't stored on the end user computing device. So if they've got a mobile phone that you don't manage security for, and they lose that device, nothing's saved on it. So it's quite a tidy way of giving people access to secure back office systems without worrying about data loss due to someone leaving their phone somewhere. Obviously, all these services are fully managed by AWS. We'll explain what that means a little bit later. They're pay-as-you-go, so you're not going to be incurring massive costs from day one. And they're reliable and secure. So as with most Amazon services, there's very good resiliency and redundancy, and it's not something that you have to build in or worry about too much. So just to run through some of the reasons why people are moving to these services. Obviously, one of the biggest reasons at the moment is we've got way more people working at home due to the whole coronavirus issue. So we have had people coming to us and seeing what we can get provisioned quickly. WorkSpaces is a good solution for that. It's something that you can get going very, very quickly. But more generally, more people are looking to work remotely. So these are some figures from AWS. 70% of workers have worked remotely. 79% of organisations expect increases in mergers and acquisitions. That introduces its own kind of issues. So you have to worry about integrating existing resources into your network in a way that's secure. AWS makes that fairly easy, and WorkSpaces can fit into that nicely. You can silo off a separate organisation into its own account and then manage their access in a very secure and tidy way. We're also seeing more organisations employing contractors, which again introduces its own security issues. If you're not giving them a device to work on, then giving them a workstation is a nice way of giving them access to your back office systems in a secure way that you can close off very, very easily and not worry about access sitting around on their end user device and possibly causing you some security issues later. The other thing that crops up a lot is data breaches due to lost or stolen devices. It happens all the time, someone leaving a laptop in the pub or something, then you've got to worry about data that's stored on it. Is it all encrypted? Have they left their password on a post-it note stuck inside it? With workstations, you can contain all that, workspaces, sorry, you can contain all that within the workspace. And again, it's fairly easy for you to shut it down or make sure that people can't get into it in the first place with MFA. And more generally, we're seeing more of a move to desktop as a service. We're certainly seeing more customers coming to us and asking about it or going ahead with deployments, and that seems to be increasing year on year. So it's something that definitely we're seeing far more interest in. So yeah, as I just said, WorkSpaces is the desktop as a service solution from AWS. Fairly easy to deploy new workspaces. You can do it in various different ways, but for a simple deployment through the AWS console, a few clicks and you've got a workspace available and someone can log into it. It's a very easy service to get going with. It's easily scalable. So if you're looking to deploy into different regions, so if you've got some users in continental Europe, then it's easy for you to deploy into a region that's close to them and give them a better experience. You can also deploy pretty much as many workspaces as you want. I know some other services have had issues with scaling, particularly with increased demand, but we haven't had any problems with workspaces. It seems to just scale, no problems. And you can integrate with your existing infrastructure. So obviously a requirement that a lot of people have is that they need the workspaces to connect to existing sites. So if they've still got stuff sitting in the data center and want to take a hybrid approach, as long as you can establish connectivity from your AWS account back to your data center or wherever you've got your resources hosted, we can sort that out, either via VPN, direct connect, however you want to do it. Ordinarily, you'll find that a lot of organizations have an existing Active Directory that they want to authenticate against. That's a fairly usual thing that people will want to be able to connect back to Active Directory. AWS offer a lot of different solutions around this. It's very straightforward to get yourself connected up to your existing Active Directory and go ahead with that. Or you can just provision a new Active Directory in AWS. And again, that's fairly easy, and there's services AWS offer to make that easy. Also, we see a lot of people wanting to connect to existing file shares. So if you're not looking to move fully cloud native and shift onto WorkDocs or a similar solution, again, as long as you can establish connectivity back to your current sites, we can connect to existing file stores. So just a quick thing about reliability and security. So again, as with most AWS services, it's a global infrastructure. So with workspaces, there's various different regions you can deploy into. Ideally, you want to deploy into a region that is geographically close to the end user. That's what's going to give them the best experience. Although saying that, we have got deployments in Ireland, which work perfectly fine. We tend to deploy into Ireland for test because it's slightly cheaper, and the performance is more than adequate. But generally, you want to deploy into a region that's close to you, and Amazon offer that. Also, it means that if one of the data centers is unavailable for some reason, then it's just going to launch in a different data center. So you're unlikely to have any downtime. We haven't experienced any problems with that, but that reliability is there. Security and compliance standards. So as with other AWS services, it's audited by third parties as part of the AWS compliance programs. There's documentation available about that. There are responsibilities on the end user, on the end customer, to make sure that certain things are set up in a secure way. So things like ensuring that you've got antivirus on the workstation, that you're keeping up to date with patches and application updates. That's something that an AWS partner such as ourselves can assist you with. Or you can tie it into whatever application deployment method you've currently got or current patching method you've got. There's different options around there. And workspaces have a 99.9% SLA commitment. As I mentioned previously, we've not had any problems really with workspaces going down, but they do have that 99.9% commitment. So pricing. Workspaces pricing is dependent on the region. As I said on the last slide, some regions are slightly cheaper than others. Pricing is also different depending on the size of the workspace you've got. So just like physical hardware, you can provision different sizes of workspace. So for example, if you provision a standard Windows workspace, which is 2 virtual CPUs, 4 gigs of RAM in Ireland, that's going to cost you $34 a month if you're paying on monthly billing. There's also pay-as-you-go billing. So for that same size, that would be $8 per month, and then a 32 cents per hour usage fee. So it's quite flexible like that if you've got infrequent usage. You can have users just jump on and then just have that $8 per month basic charge, and then just pay as you go for the rest. They also offer upgrades on the software that's installed. So if you don't currently have licensing for it, you can pay an extra $15 per month per user to get Office Professional installed and Trend Endpoint Security. We do use Trend Endpoint Security on quite a lot of our customers. It's a good package for just making sure that security is in place. So we do recommend that people have a look at that, but you can use whatever existing software you're using, just deploy that onto your workspaces. One of the interesting things that Amazon are doing at the moment is, as of the 1st of April, if you're a new Workspaces user, so you haven't used Workspaces previously, for up to 50 users, there's no charge up until the end of June. So it's quite a good time if you've been considering Workspaces just to dip your toe in the water, because you're going to save that cost on the first 50 users. So particularly if you're looking to do proof of concept work at the moment, then you're going to save a little bit of money on that. So I'll run through the architecture at a very high level. If people have got more specific technical questions, then ask in the chat and we can get back to you. This is just to give you a rough overview of what a usual deployment looks like. So your end users will have some kind of a client, either Windows or through the web browser, or obviously there's Mac clients and Linux clients available, or you can even log on with a tablet. You connect over the internet to Amazon's public AWS endpoints, which handle the authentication and then also the streaming of the session. That then connects on to the actual workspace. That sits within the Amazon managed side of workspaces. So this side, Amazon looks after. You don't have to worry about it. Part that's customer managed is this bottom half. So you basically have to make sure that you have the network part set up correctly so that the workspaces sit in an appropriate area of the network. Normally it's in a private subnet. You also need some kind of authentication method. So as I mentioned earlier, quite a usual use case is that customers will want to connect back to their corporate network. So you establish connectivity either with a VPN or with Direct Connect, and then you can use a piece of software called AD Connector, which is a service on the Amazon side. That basically just lets you connect back to your corporate network in a secure way, and then your workspace can just authenticate against that. So if you've got an existing Active Directory, your users can log on to a workspace using their existing credentials, and you don't need to set up anything else. You can also, on AD Connector, easily add two-factor authentication. So it will connect to most MFA services. We've had people using Duo, OneLogin, Centrify, but pretty much any service is going to allow you to connect back to it. It's an option that a lot of customers want to look at, so they just make sure that they've got that added security in place. But yeah, that's an option. Also, as I mentioned earlier, you can connect back to your corporate network just to access any file stores you've got sitting in here, if you're not looking to move those on to be cloud native. What else did I want to run through here? Just to mention, you can also use zero clients here. So you can use dedicated desktop devices that will connect back to cloud. They're quite nice because you can basically just roll them out to end users, and you don't have to worry about desktop support anymore. So if you're going fully cloud native, that's a nice option for a lot of people. Or as I mentioned, you can just use the client. Another option here for authentication is you can use an existing Active Directory and provision that into the cloud, so you can have your AD replicated into the cloud. That's something that a lot of customers look to if they're just wanting to use their existing Active Directory, but continue using that in AWS for their workspaces. Right, let's move on. So just going to give a quick demo of workspaces. Let me come out of this presentation. So if you're looking to do a very quick proof of concept for workspaces, there's only a couple of things you really need to get in place. So you'll need an Active Directory. As I mentioned, you can use AD connector to connect back to on-site. But if you're looking to just do something very basic, you can use Simple AD, which is an AWS managed service, which is a very lightweight Active Directory service. So if we just set one up now. Oh. So you can see that's just sitting and creating at the moment. So that's extremely easy for you to set up. The other thing you'll need to do is obviously set up workspaces themselves. So you can see here, I've got an existing workspace, which is sitting as stopped at the moment. If I want to create a workspace, I can just click on Launch Workspaces, choose a directory. My new one's not there because it's just sitting as creating. This is my existing one. You can create new user accounts from here, or as you're connected to the Active Directory, you can also just search. I've got my existing user, add it in. Now I can choose what kind of workspace I want. So if we flick through here, you can see standard workspace, 2 vCPUs, 4 gigs of RAM. But there's different options available here. So you can go for a performance one, which has got more RAM, all the way up to Graphics Pro, which has a graphics card attached to it, which people can use for CAD work. And here you can choose a bundle to attach. So you can put these together yourself if you're looking to package up some applications and roll it out to your users, and put together different bundles for different types of end user. Here we're just going to use the basic one. So next. Got the 2 running mode options here. So always on is the monthly billing, which I mentioned earlier. Or you can just use the pay-as-you-go option. So what this does is allows you to choose a time that it'll auto stop after. So if a user just disconnects from their workspace and they're not using it, you can just use this to make sure it gets shut down so you're not getting billed for it regardless. What that'll do is just hibernate the workspace. Next time they log in, it will come back alive again. You can set the workspace volumes to encrypt at rest. We'd recommend that you use that. There's no real reason you wouldn't want to encrypt those. I think for most customers, you're just going to want to switch encryption on. You can also use your own encryption keys. So this is just allowing me to review the options. I'm going to launch in Ireland. And that's it. So they take up to 20 minutes to become available. If you've got encryption switched on, it's a little bit longer, but still pretty fast. If there's an email address configured for your user, they're going to get an email with instructions on how to connect to it. The email is going to contain a couple of important things. One of those will be a token. And you enter in that token when you first launch the WorkSpaces client, and that basically sets up all the configuration. So you're not typing in endpoints to connect to or anything like that. It's going to configure it all for you. And then the only thing the end user needs apart from that is their username and password. So any authentication information they need. So hopefully now I can connect to my existing workspace and just show you what it looks like. So as I was saying, when you first mention it, when you first log into it, it will ask you for a registration code, and that registration code sets everything up. This one's already been pre-configured, so all I have to do is put in my login credentials. So it's gone on my second monitor. So there we go. Log me into a workspace. So essentially, this is just the same as any other workstation. It's just sitting in the cloud. So this just has the basic application bundle, which comes with Firefox. That's about it. But as I say, you can install other applications on this and then create a bundle from that. So if you've got, say, a handful of back office applications that you use, you can just install them on this workspace and then generate a bundle. And then you just use that bundle to deploy to the rest of your users, so you don't have to install the same things on multiple users. There's other application deployment methods available. So if you're currently using SCCM, you can use that. You could use group policy, any of the other application deployment tools. Amazon also offer their own application deployment package called Workspace Application Manager, and that containerizes the applications. So just another way of you deploying the applications to end users. But yeah, that's your workspace. And I can just sign out of that as normal. So you can log into that wherever you are and just pick up from where you were. They do also offer a web client. I'd recommend, if at all possible, you use one of the applications, but the web client, it works fine if you need to jump on and do some stuff. It's just not as fully featured. There's also another application that's currently in beta, WSP client. The performance is slightly better and it offers some extra functionality like bidirectional video streaming, so you can use your webcam within a virtual desktop. But as I say, it's currently in beta, so it's not recommended for production use. But that should be coming out soon, and performance is slightly better. It's slightly more efficient at optimizing streaming. So the other thing we were going to run through was WorkDocs. Just a second for me to get my notes back up. So I mentioned at the beginning, but WorkDocs is Amazon's managed content creation, storage, and collaboration service. Basically, what that means is if you're looking to shift your existing user file stores and team shares onto the cloud, and do it into a fully managed service, so you don't have to worry about setting up all the resources or increasing drive sizes, things like that. WorkDocs is an option available to you. It offers some collaboration and workflows. So if you want to have an approvals process for a document, you can upload, say, a Word document into your drive, and then request that a manager approves it. They'll get that request sitting in WorkDocs, and they can just click on it to approve. So it's fairly easy to set up, and something that's quite interesting if you don't want to have a lot of overhead to set up an approvals process. Similar to OneDrive and other solutions that are available, it's got web and mobile access. So if you just need to jump on from somewhere and log on to WorkDocs, you can do that. More importantly, for people that are going to be using WorkSpaces, there's an application called WorkDocs Drive. So similar to what most people would be doing in their existing environments, you can just map a drive to WorkDocs, and your users can store everything there. So just a nice way of managing everything and making sure people don't have things stored locally on their workstation. There's also a migration process to WorkDocs. So if you're looking to move an existing share onto WorkDocs, that's something that Amazon offer tooling around. You basically just upload to S3, and there's a managed process to put that all in WorkDocs. So pricing on WorkDocs, again, it's per region. So as an example, for Ireland, it's $5 per user per month. And that includes the first terabyte of space. If you use over a terabyte, there's some extra costs that they tag on. Again, it's different per region. If you're using WorkSpaces, then each user gets their first 50 gigabytes of storage for free. So they kind of tag WorkDocs into WorkSpaces. But then if you want to increase to the 1 terabyte per user, I think it's $2 per user to upgrade that. So not that expensive. But again, interestingly, AWS are offering WorkDocs for new WorkDocs customers. They're offering the 1 terabyte per user package free for your first 50 users up until the end of June. That tags in quite nicely with WorkSpaces. So again, if you're looking to do proof of concept and see if it's right for you, then it's a good time to do it because those first 50 users are free. I'll just run you through showing you the workspace drive. Right, so here you can see my workspace has a WorkDocs drive attached to it. So any files that I save in here are just sitting in WorkDocs. So if I log into the web interface here, you can see I can get access to all my files. I won't run through it in detail, but here you can see the approvals process. So for a given document, I can hit request approval and then send this on to a user. You can also set up groups, so you can use your existing Active Directory for this. So if you've got like a managers group, you could tag this in here so that people were easily able to ask for their managers to review things. You can also set data retention on this. So if you've got any legal requirements for retaining deleted data, you can set in this so store it for like 90 days or a year or something, so you could easily recover it from there. But yeah, it's an interesting solution if you're looking to have just cloud native file stores. Right, so that's everything that we wanted to run through. As I said, couldn't run through AppStream because it's a bit more complicated, wouldn't fit in 40 minutes, but if you've got any questions around that, let us know. You can see Dan's been answering questions in the chat, but if anyone's got any more questions, feel free to ask now, or you can drop us an email at the info address, or just email myself and we'll be able to get back to you.
Hi Ricky, I've got a question if I can.
Yeah, cool.
Does it support custom AMIs to actually use, for users' BDI sessions? So if I was a heavily regulated organisation, for example, and I was looking to deploy this, I may have certain restrictions that I have to apply. I may not want my users to be able to just install applications. I may have custom configurations that may enforce me to be compliant with, external regulators, etc. So can I, pre-bake, an AMI and then have this assigned to users' workspace sessions?
Yeah, sure. So you've got images and bundles. So images is the underlying OS, and then a bundle is the apps that you're installing on top of it. So what you can do is you can use the existing Amazon Windows 10 image, for example, and then customize that as much as you want, and then use that to deploy. Or you can import, there is a process so you can import an existing Windows 10 installation. So you can do like bring your own licensing as well, so you get a slight discount on it. But yeah, you can import Windows 10. It's a little bit of a fiddly process. Normally we'd recommend you go with the Amazon image and then customize it and use that as your baseline. You're normally going to get a better end result, but you can import an existing Windows 10 Enterprise or Pro installation. And then for your applications on top of that, as I say, you can set up a bundle or you can use an existing app deployment method to do that.
So could I, for example, when you say about the bundles and app deployment, so could I link back to maybe an on-premise Nexus repo and kind of deploy applications via tools such as Chef or Ansible and et cetera onto these images, or is that separate? You can?
Yeah,
okay, cool.
You absolutely can. So we've put in different pipelines for customers depending on what their requirements are. You can go really simple. So you just, as I say, install the apps on a user, create a image and bundle from that, and then use that like gold image kind of just to deploy.
Yeah.
Or if you've got a much slicker process, then you can just tie into that. Basically, just treat them like they're an existing workstation. That's
Absolutely.
all it is. So
yeah, I get.
Like,
if you had a, sorry, I was just going to say, I get you can have like a base image, but then obviously, as work patterns change, users may well find, they have requirements for different applications, etc. So they may require kind of a difference. And just one more thing. So the actual the workspace that's been chosen for whatever specification's been chosen, can you assign different layers? So you may have different user roles within your organization. So you may have some developers which potentially require a higher spec machine, so more CPU, more RAM, and then you may have more kind of just different granularities of requirements. Can you distribute that amongst your configurations?
Yeah, sure. So if you've got quite a simple process and you're just manually launching workspaces, then you just choose it when you launch it. But you can also fit this into pipeline. So if you can identify your developers, say, on AD groups, you can have quite a slick pipeline so that when you request a new workspace, based on what group they have or what department they're in, that can define what specification of workspace they get. So for large organizations that are looking to roll out hundreds of users, that's probably their best bet. But yeah, again, it kind of depends on what your existing setup's like and how slick you want it to be, but that's definitely something you can do.
Yeah, so I'm just also thinking of cost control as well. So obviously the more, the higher spec the instance, the more it's going to actually cost.
Just to butt in, the other thing, if you're worried about cost, obviously AWS offer a whole bunch of tools around monitoring. So one of the things we can do, so we tend to do this for customers, but the other way round to how you're describing. So if we've got customers that look like they're overutilizing, then we'll recommend they upgrade.
Okay.
But also you could just look for underutilization. So you just monitor and report on it.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Cool.
Hi, Ricky. This Amit from CentralLink. It's very informative. Thank you for the presentation. I do have a couple of questions.
Yep.
So the user profile, is it persistent across the VMs, or is it one-to-one mapping to a VM to a user?
Yeah, so you've kind of got the OS volume and the user volume. So let me, it's all logged in. Yeah, cool. So this is your user volume, and that's completely separate to the OS. So you could rebuild and then keep the user profile. But again, it depends on your setup. So I think for most customers, they'd look to make sure that you store everything on a mapped drive, so either on WorkDocs or an existing file store. So you just ensure that the bare minimum stored on the user profile volume.
Okay, and then you need the one-to-one mapping with the user to a workspace, like a VM?
Yes, yeah. So
you can't have multi-session. Windows machines with Windows 10 Enterprise?
I mean, you could have a generic user that multiple people could log into, but it's kind of one-to-one. So each workspace that you're provisioning is really intended to be for one end user.
And if you have already a GPOs in place which maps the drives for home drives and stuff for users, how does that handle with the on-premise network maps?
Yeah, so that will still work. You just need to make sure that you've got connectivity in place between your current your AWS environment and wherever the files shares are. So if they're sitting on-prem, then you'll need connectivity between your AWS VPC and on-prem. So normally you'll get people using Direct Connect or a VPN or a combination of the two for resiliency. So that's something you probably want to get a partner to help you with if you're not experienced with, because obviously you need to make sure it's done in a secure way. But yeah, as long as you've got that connectivity, just use your existing group policies to handle everything.
Okay.
That answer your question?
Yeah. In terms of the OneDrive, because the OneDrive is pre-built, baked into the Windows 10 now, the storage available on OneDrive for the Office 365 users, they will still get their OneDrive.
Yeah, if you want to use OneDrive, then just carry on using OneDrive. We've actually got a customer we're doing a fairly large workspace deployment for at the moment. They currently use OneDrive, so we're suggesting they stick with that. It fits their requirements and it's already in place. So yes, that's something that you can do easily.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? I will take that as a no. Thanks again, everyone, for your time.
Thanks very much, Ricky. That was great.
All right. Yep. All right.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, bye.
Thanks, Rick.
I've got a question.
Okay. Yep.
I just want to know, in terms of security, I know you've said that the desktop comes with antivirus. Is that like the only recommendation you would do for this?
Sorry,
or would you use like firewalls and everything else to secure it as well?
Sorry, you went a little bit quiet there, but I think you were asking about antivirus and any recommendations. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So we've been using Trend quite a lot. Trend endpoint security works fairly well. We've got customers using Symantec endpoint protection. Basically, you can use whatever you're using at the moment, or there are options available in AWS that are fairly easy to deploy. Really, it's something you want to just go through your requirements and make sure that it's going to cover everything. But yeah, whatever you can install on a normal physical workstation, you can do in workspaces. I think you're asking about firewalls as well. Is that correct?
Correct, yes. That was the main point. Yeah, the firewall. Would you add any extra? Because currently in our infrastructure, we connect to a VPN from our laptops at home, and then we connect to our network. So we wouldn't need that VPN anymore using workspaces, right?
Yeah, so it's actually something that crops up quite often, particularly with the coronavirus thing that's happening at the moment. You get a lot of companies where the VPN was fine for them when there was like 20 users or something logging on. But now when hundreds of people are logging on, it's not adequate and it's very costly to get upgraded. So with workspaces, you can just provision them a workspace, and then their internet connectivity is just going out from AWS. Now, if you want to secure that down and maybe like restrict what websites are going on, put malware detection in there, things like that, again, there's options available. So Sophos UTM is a package that's available. Again, fairly easy to deploy in the cloud, and I think it's got a 30-day free trial. But similarly, if you've got existing infrastructure that you use, as long as you can establish connectivity to it, so either VPN or direct connect, then you can just carry on using that. But it's dependent on what you're looking to do and what you're looking to get out of it. But yeah, there's options available.
Okay, thank you, Ricky.
Cool. Right, any other questions?
So just final one question. It's me again. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
here you just mentioned the direct connect. How does the egress traffic charging works for all the workstation users? Hundreds and thousands of users are using workspaces, and they're hairpinning back everything onto the direct connect back to the on-premise. Does the egress of data charged at a per VM EC2 instance level?
It's just the normal bandwidth costs. So I think that's something you probably want to discuss with either ourselves or a partner in more detail. But you need to calculate what your normal bandwidth costs were and apply that. But it's not going to be like per workspace. It's just going to be based on the bandwidth you're using. We've had customers decide just to egress out from AWS, and like I was saying, you might want to put a firewall solution in place for that just to make sure it was all secure, or just send the traffic back over a connection to your corporate network and handle it that way. But yeah, I think that's something you probably want to run through in more detail with a partner just to make sure you've got all your costings right, because yeah, there's a few things that you'd want to pay attention to there.
Yeah.
Cool. Anyone else?
I mean, now that Amit's mentioned costs, from your experience doing these migrations as a partner for your clients, have your clients been surprised by any costs that they weren't foreseeing originally? Again, like bandwidth or transfer costs or anything that will, apart from what's obvious?
No, I think it's right to mention bandwidth costs, because, like I say, it depends what you're connecting to and what your usage pattern's like. But that's something that a partner should run through with you and make sure that they've covered. Apart from that, not really. The costs are pretty straightforward. They're all up there on AWS's pricing calculator. You can run through to get a ballpark figure. One of the things you do have to think about is if you're migrating data into like WorkDocs or something, just making sure you do it in an efficient way. But again, there's options available there. So if you've got a whole load of data, you might want to snowball it, which is a data import process that Amazon offer, which just speeds things along. But yeah, in terms of being surprised by costs, I would say no. As long as you've clearly spec'd things out originally and you've been reasonable with the size of the workstation you're giving the end users, there's not really anything to be surprised by, to be honest.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
But like I say, it's worth running through the partner just to make sure you've got your costings right. There is the AWS pricing calculator, but sometimes people get tripped up on bandwidth and forgetting to take account of little bits and pieces like NAT gateways and things, but it shouldn't drastically affect your costs enough to be extremely worried. But we'd always recommend you go through it with a partner.
Okay,
cool. Any other questions? I will take that as a no. As I say, The contact details are there on the screen, so info@rebura.com if you've got a general inquiry, or if you've got some questions for me, send it over and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. But otherwise, hopefully that was useful for you. Sorry for the problems yesterday, but looks like we've been more successful today. So thanks for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Ricky. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.